My sister posted a poll online about my 9-year-old daughter. The question read, "What is worse, her crooked haircut or her nasty attitude?" And our entire family voted. They laughed in the comments while my little girl was locked in the bathroom, crying her eyes out, her face pressed against the cold tiles, wondering why the people who were supposed to love her the most had chosen to humiliate her instead. When I found out what they had done, I did not cry. I did not scream. I did not beg for an explanation. I sat down, opened my laptop, and I made sure that 5 hours later, every single one of them regretted it. At the time, I had no idea what I was about to walk into. There was no warning, no preparation, no moment where I braced myself for what was coming. It was a regular Saturday evening. I had just finished a long week at work, and all I wanted was the familiar comfort of home. I expected the usual noise, the smell of dinner drifting from the kitchen, the sound of the television in the background, maybe June's laughter floating down the hallway. Instead, I got silence. The kind of silence that sits wrong in your chest before you even understand why. The kind that tells you something is off before your mind has caught up to your gut. My husband Mark was standing in the hallway when I stepped through the door. He had that look on his face, the one where he is trying to stay calm for my sake, but his eyes are giving everything away. He told me she had been in her room for 2 hours. He said she would not talk, that he thought she had been crying. For a brief second, I told myself it was something small. Kids have hard days. Maybe she had argued with a friend at school. Maybe something had happened at a birthday party. Maybe she had lost something she loved. I dropped my bag by the door and went upstairs. I knocked gently. "Sweetheart, it is me. Nothing." I tried again. "Can I come in?" Still nothing. So I turned the handle slowly and pushed the door open. She was curled up on her bed, her knees pulled to her chest, her face blotchy and swollen from crying. She was clutching her phone in both hands like it was the last solid thing in a world that had started to tilt. I said her name softly. "June." I asked her what was wrong. She shook her head and told me it was nothing, but her voice cracked on that single word, and I knew she was lying, not to deceive me, but because she did not yet have the language to describe what had been done to her. I sat beside her on the bed and I waited. I have learned over the years that sometimes silence is the most powerful thing a mother can offer. Not questions, not solutions, just presence. Eventually, she turned and shoved the phone into my hands and buried her face back into the pillow. Before she let go, she whispered 2 words. "Do not be mad." I looked at the screen. At first, it did not register. It was just text and numbers and a small photo of my daughter. And then my eyes found it. A poll, created and shared by my sister Courtney, asking our family members to weigh in on what was worse about my child. Her crooked haircut or her spoiled attitude. 19 votes. 19 people, most of them relatives, had participated. I scrolled through the comments and each name hit me like something sharp. My mother Margaret had written, "In my day, girls did not make such a fuss. A haircut was just a haircut." My sister Courtney had voted for the attitude and added, "Always spoiled. Now she looks the part." My nephew Ethan, who is 11 years old, had commented, "She actually thought it was fashion. Can you believe that?" And then Bella, Courtney's daughter, 9 years old, the same age as June, had written, "She was smiling like a model yesterday. So embarrassing." There were more. Short, cutting, laughing. Little knives dressed up as jokes. I blinked at the screen for a long moment. I genuinely wondered if I was misreading something, if there was some layer of context that would make it less awful than it appeared. But no, there was no misunderstanding. My family had seen a photo of my daughter, a 9-year-old child who trusted them, and they had turned her into entertainment. They had voted on her humiliation like it was a game. Beside me, June's voice broke through the pillow, muffled and ragged, each word sounding like it cost her something to say. She told me that they had clapped for her, that they had smiled at her, that they had told her she looked pretty and called it fashion. And then, in the smallest voice I have ever heard come out of her, she asked me why they would say that if they thought it was ugly. That question went straight through me, not because I did not have an answer, but because I did, and the answer was devastating. They said it because kindness was never the point. They said it because they wanted her to believe she was safe, and then they wanted to take it away. The betrayal was not accidental. It was designed. I set the phone down on the mattress and I pulled her against me and held her while her small body shook with every breath. I did not speak right away. I just let her feel that I was there. When her breathing began to slow, I looked at her and I told her clearly, in a voice that did not waver, this was not about her. It was about them. She was beautiful. She was kind. And the fact that she had believed them only proved how much better she was than every person who had laughed. When I went back downstairs, Mark was waiting. He asked if she was okay. I told him she would be. His eyes asked for more, but I did not have the words yet. I was still carrying everything inside, organizing it, trying to understand the full shape of what had happened. After June fell asleep that night, I sat alone at the kitchen table with my phone in front of me and read every single comment again. Each one carved a little deeper, and I made a decision. Not from rage, not from panic, but from a place of absolute clarity. What they did that night would cost them everything, because I was finished. To understand why this moment broke something permanently, you have to understand that this was not the first time. This was not new cruelty from people I had always known to be kind. This was the same pattern I had watched repeat itself my entire life. It had just finally targeted someone I loved more than myself. Growing up, Courtney was the golden child. That was simply the reality of our household. She could do nothing wrong. She could sing off key and everyone would applaud. She could draw something careless and our parents would act as though she had created a masterpiece. She had a gift for performing, and our family had a gift for adoring her. Meanwhile, I was the quiet one, the one who studied late and got straight A's and was met with a nod and a move along. If I ever pointed out the imbalance, if I ever asked why Courtney received so much more warmth and attention, my mother had one response. You are imagining it, Lydia. You are too sensitive. That phrase was a door slammed in my face. It was a lesson delivered over and over until I learned it. Do not expect fairness, do not complain, do not ask to be seen. Just take it. And I did. For years, I took it. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I was tough enough. But I want to be clear, I could absorb the pain when it was aimed at me. What I could not absorb was watching it aimed at my daughter. There is a specific memory that I carry with me everywhere, one that has never fully faded. I was 13 years old. I had spent months saving money, babysitting neighborhood kids, mowing lawns, washing dishes, anything that would add a few dollars to the envelope I kept hidden in my desk drawer. I was saving for a dress. Not just any dress, but the dress I would wear to my school dance, my first real one. When I finally had enough, I bought it. It was nothing extravagant, but to me it was everything. Courtney offered to help me get ready. She came into my room and pinned the hem and adjusted the straps and stood back with this warm smile and told me I looked absolutely amazing. I believed her. I walked into that dance with my head up, feeling for the first time like maybe I belonged in a moment like that. And then, from across the gym, I heard her voice coming from the girls' bathroom. She was laughing with her friends. She said she could not believe I had actually worn it. She said it looked like a curtain. Her friends laughed with her. I stood very still in the middle of that gym, and I felt the night cave in around me. When I told my parents what had happened, hoping desperately that someone would take my side, they dismissed me without a second thought. They said Courtney had only been trying to help, that I was being ungrateful. Not humiliated, not betrayed, ungrateful. I carried that word for a long time. I did not forgive her, not then, and maybe not truly ever. I told myself as an adult that she had been immature, that she would grow out of it. She did not. Years passed. Courtney and I both became mothers. Our daughters were the same age, in the same school, at the same events, and the rivalry that had defined our childhood did not end. It passed down. Last year's spring fair was the clearest proof of that. Bella had always been the one who got the loudest applause at every family gathering. She had the curated look, the pressed outfit, the crowd of relatives cheering her name. June would usually stand at the edge of things, watching quietly, clapping politely. But at that spring fair, June decided to make her own fairy costume. She spent days on it. Glue and glitter and scraps of fabric covered the kitchen table for a week. It was a 9-year-old's masterpiece, and it won prettiest costume, a ribbon pinned right to her chest. I will never forget the look on June's face when they called her name. Pure pride, pure, uncontainable joy. The kind of happiness that fills a room, but I will also never forget how our family reacted. My mother clapped with all the enthusiasm of someone checking a box. Courtney smiled with her teeth and nothing behind her eyes. Bella sulked. I could see the resentment simmering in all of them, barely contained. I told myself maybe I was imagining it. I wanted to believe that because to June's face they had smiled, they had said good job, and I wanted her to enjoy her win without me poisoning it with my suspicions. So I smiled with her. I let her glow. She deserved that moment. But inside, I knew. That day was the day Courtney decided June was no longer just my daughter. She was competition. Here is the part that still makes me furious when I think about it. Throughout all of this, I was the one holding them together financially. I work in IT and I make a good salary, more than enough to cover my own household comfortably. But for years, I had been quietly covering theirs as well. I helped my parents with their mortgage payments. I paid their utilities. I covered their groceries when things were tight. I helped Courtney open her salon. I fronted the lease deposit. I bought her equipment. I slipped her money during slow months so she would not lose the business. I told myself I was being a good daughter. I told myself that if I gave enough, if I supported enough, they would finally stop treating me like the outsider. I told myself that June deserved to have grandparents and cousins in her life, and I did not want her growing up alone in the world just because I had a toxic childhood. So I kept quiet. I told myself I was buying peace. The truth was simpler and uglier than that. I was feeding their resentment. They resented that I had built something stable while they had not. They resented that I could provide when they could not. And they resented June for shining in ways that made Bella feel like less. I had been paying to fund the very contempt they directed at my child. That Friday, Courtney called. She told me to bring June over. She said she would do both girls' hair for the school event on Monday, that they would look amazing, that it would be fun. And I know some of you are already shaking your heads at me. Why did I say yes? Because June was begging me. Because she wanted so desperately to believe her aunt would make her feel beautiful, because Courtney was a professional stylist. Hair was literally her job. And because some stubborn, hopeful part of me still wanted to believe that family would not be cruel to a child. So I said yes. I regret it, but that is why I did it. When I picked June up that evening, her bangs were jagged and uneven. Her layers looked like they had been cut by someone who had never held scissors before, but she was glowing. They had praised her, clapped for her, told her she was fashionable, told her she looked incredible. I smiled with her because what was the alternative? Crush her in the car on the way home? Tell her she looked ridiculous while she was sitting there with her eyes shining. I let her have her moment because she deserved to feel beautiful, even if I had doubts gnawing at me the entire drive home. Maybe that makes me weak, but I would rather be weak for one night than take something like that from my daughter. Saturday night, I saw the poll, and everything became clear. The haircut was not a mistake. The praise was not genuine. The poll was not a joke. It was deliberate, calculated. It was the same trick Courtney had used on me at 13, dressed up in a new decade. Only this time she had aimed it at my child, and this time I was not going to let it go. The first thing I did was open my banking app. I canceled every automatic transfer. No more rent supplements for Courtney. No more help with the salon bills. No more quietly covering my parents' utilities or groceries. It took 5 minutes and a few taps on a screen. 5 minutes to end years of being their financial safety net. Some people might call that harsh. I call it the only honest thing I had done in years, because family does not mock a 9-year-old in a group chat. Family does not engineer a child's humiliation and then laugh while she cries. They had stopped being my family the moment they did that. They were debtors, and the bank was closed. The second thing I did was for June. First thing Sunday morning, I took her to the best salon in town. I told her we were going for pancakes afterward, which was true, but the real reason was that I needed her to see herself clearly, without the shame they had tried to plant in her. The stylist looked at her hair, and I watched her expression change. She leaned in, examined the uneven layers and the hacked bangs, and quietly said that whoever did this had not cared how the child would feel. I wanted to tell her that they had cared very much, just not in the right direction. Instead, I held June's hand while the stylist worked. Snip by careful snip, the damage was reshaped into a clean, sleek bob that framed her face beautifully. When it was done, June looked at herself in the mirror for a long moment. I watched her face, and then slowly, unmistakably, she smiled. I told her she looked perfect. I told her she was going to walk into school with her head up and her shoulders back, and no one was going to take that from her. Because that was what this moment was really about. Not just fixing a haircut, but teaching her something I had taken far too long to learn myself. When people try to tear you down, you stand taller. You do not shrink for them, you rise. That night, I turned my attention back to Courtney, not through screaming, not through confrontation at her door. I had something better than anger. I had the truth. I opened the local parent group chat, the one where playdates are organized, where bake sales are planned, where school events are discussed, and where reputations are built and dismantled in a single thread. I did not rant. I did not exaggerate. I did not embellish a single detail. I simply told them what had happened. I attached the photo of June's hair as it had looked before we fixed it, and I wrote that this had been done by a professional stylist to her own niece. That the same woman had praised the child to her face and then mocked her in a family group chat. I added one final line. If she can do this to her own family, imagine what she would do to your children. Then I hit send and closed the laptop. For a moment I sat in the quiet and wondered if it would matter. Maybe people would scroll past. Maybe they would tell me I was overreacting. But then the replies started arriving. That is awful. I am never booking her again. Parents need to know about this. And just like that, the boycott began. By Monday, the ripple was already spreading through town. A friend texted to tell me the salon was half empty and people were talking. By Tuesday, Courtney had 2 no-shows in a single morning. Cancellations were coming in one after another. By Wednesday, I knew she had figured out what was happening. The phone rang while I was cooking dinner. Her name lit up the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail. But then I thought, no, she needs to hear me. I picked up. She skipped any greeting and went straight to accusation. She said I was behind it. She said her clients were canceling left and right, that I was trying to destroy her, that it was just a haircut, that it was just a joke, that I had always been jealous of her, and now I was dragging her down with me. Her voice was shaking. That told me more than her words did. When she finally paused, I spoke in the calmest voice I had. I told her I had not destroyed her. I had simply told the truth. The rest, I said, was entirely on her. Then I hung up. For years I had stayed quiet. I had absorbed it, excused it, explained it away. I had told myself it was not worth the damage. But this time I had spoken, and all it had taken was the honest truth to bring everything they had built on my silence crashing down. And they did not yet know how much further they were going to fall. 2 days after Courtney's call, my mother rang. I answered because I wanted to hear what she would say, what version of events she had constructed. She skipped hello entirely and went straight to accusation, the same as her daughter. She asked how I could do this. She asked if I really wanted to destroy Courtney over a haircut, a silly little joke in a chat. I told her calmly, colder than I felt, that she had called my daughter spoiled, that she had laughed at her, that she had been laughing at me my entire life, and that I was finished being their punchline. She gasped. She said families do not cut each other off. I told her families do not humiliate children. She had lost the right to call herself my family the moment she mocked my daughter. There was silence, and then she hung up. The confrontation at my door came days later. I heard a car in the driveway, then heavy footsteps, then a knock that shook the frame. I opened the door and there they were. My mother with her jaw set like she was preparing for battle. Courtney with red eyes and a rage that had nowhere left to go. Bella lurking in the background with her arms folded. Courtney spoke first. She told me I had gone too far, that I was ruining her on purpose, that I had destroyed her business and her life over nothing more than a haircut and a little gossip. My mother jumped in immediately, her voice climbing. She told me they could not pay their bills, that Courtney could not keep the salon running, that they could not keep the house without my help. She asked if this was really worth tearing the family apart. Something in me that had been held tightly for a very long time finally let go. I told them that I had not torn this family apart. They had done that, slowly and deliberately, over many years. They had done it when they taught me I would never be good enough. They had done it when they defended Courtney while she humiliated me, year after year, and told me I was too sensitive for feeling it. Courtney rolled her eyes and told me I had always been jealous, that this was really about the fact that people liked her more. I laughed, not warmly. I told her the only thing I was jealous of was how she had managed to spend her entire life without a single moment of self-awareness. She reddened, but I did not stop. I told her that I had not made anything up. I had shown people exactly what she did, and they had decided they did not want her near their children's hair. That was not on me. That was on her. Then my mother's voice cracked and she asked again, almost pleading this time, what about the house? I looked at her and I said, you made your choices. Live with them. I'm not funding you anymore. I'm not swallowing my anger anymore. And you will never get near June again. Courtney's composure finally broke. She told me they could not pay the mortgage. She said I had destroyed her. And I told her quietly, no, Courtney, you destroyed yourself. I just stopped paying for it. Behind me, Mark stepped forward and put his hand on the door. I met my mother's eyes one final time. She had asked if any of this was worth tearing the family apart. I told her yes, because June was worth more than every one of them combined. Mark closed the door. They knocked again, frantic, desperate. I did not answer. For the first time in my life, I did not owe them a single thing, and they knew it. In the months that followed, the consequences settled in. Courtney's salon did not just slow down. It collapsed completely. The chairs sat empty, the appointments vanished, the whispers spread through every parent group in the area. Without clients and without my money covering the gaps, she could not keep the doors open. My mother could not cover the mortgage without the steady supplements I had been quietly providing for years. Without my financial support, everything they had built on my generosity buckled under its own weight. They packed up eventually and left town. No goodbye, no apology, just silence, the same silence they had expected me to keep for decades. June healed. Her hair grew back soft and even. The jagged bangs disappeared. The uneven layers were long gone, and with them went the shame they had tried to attach to her. She laughed again. She walked into school every morning with her chin up. She performed on stage without flinching. One evening after a school production, she squeezed my hand in the dark and whispered, "Mom, I know now. You will always stand up for me." That moment was worth everything that came before it and everything that came after. Some people have said I went too far. That cutting my family off, posting publicly about what Courtney did, ending the financial support, it was excessive. That it was just a haircut. Others have said I should have done all of it years earlier. I have thought about both of those positions more times than I can count. What I know is this. My daughter looked at me that night on her bed and asked why people who said they loved her had lied to her face. I never want her to ask that question again. And I made sure she would not have to. So you tell me, did I go too far, or did I finally just go far enough?